Hello and welcome to the Wisdom Podcast. I am your host, Sierra. And today, my hope and prayer for this episode is that we are able to reach the young married couples, the young mothers who are dealing with things and it's hard to speak on because it feels like not a lot of people know what you're going through. And I hope through our conversation that we are able to share light. Um, and have someone see the light at the end of the tunnel. So, with no further ado, Miss Jazlyn, please introduce yourself to the world. Let us know who you are and all that you are.
Yeah, for sure. So my name is Jazlyn. I am 26 years old and I feel really old now. I am a wife to my high school sweetheart, and I am also a stay-at-home mother to my two beautiful daughters, Anais and Aleyah. So it's a 4-year-old and then my almost 2-year-old. She turns two in
Okay.
like I think 2 weeks. Um,
Okay.
I'm a stay-at-home mom. I'm also a travel advisor, and I own a Central Florida networking group. Or I'm a
Aw-
founder, not an owner. I'm the founder of a Central Florida networking group for
Awesome.
Hispanic women. So
I
that is
love
me.
that. Yes, ma'am. So start. Let's start with you said high school sweetheart.
Yes,
Let's give us a little bit of your love story so we can get a taste of that.
for sure. So it's a little rocky.
Okay. But
We
as
met
they
in
all are.
always. We met in 2013. He was actually my cousin's best friend, and I never knew of him. He wasn't really my type. Um,
Okay.
but he just so happened to, I think it was like lunchtime, he came over because my cousin was with me. And we somehow started talking,
Mhm.
and he messaged me, I think Thanksgiving break. I didn't know it was him because he had a really old Facebook profile photo. And I swore I thought his last name was something different. So I was like, I don't know who this is. But because of that, we started talking, we got closer. Um, he was really shy, and I think fast forward to Valentine's Day, he ended up asking me out. I was like, yeah, sure. That was on a Friday. The following Monday, he ended up getting suspended for the rest of the school year for smoking weed in the bathroom with my cousin and somebody else. And
Oh,
I was like,
wow.
yeah. I was like, okay, this is different. Um, I obviously didn't want to tell my mom that.
Right, right.
And
Mom, don't
yeah,
watch the podcast.
definitely don't. Yeah, we were cool though. We texted, but he never wanted to hang out. He was really shy. So I honestly ended up breaking up with him. And then the following school year, he was back. We started talking, and November he asked me out, and we've been dating since.
Oh
So
my
yeah.
goodness. And
Or
so
married, but yeah.
what grade was that for you in 2013?
So when we first met, it was my junior year and it was his sophomore
Okay.
year.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, I don't count the first time. I don't because I
Yeah,
broke up with
no.
him. I was like, but I count the second time.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like when people take long breaks, I'm like, you can't just count in that
No,
extra time. Like you got
not
to
at
drop
all.
that off.
Not
And
at all.
my story with my husband is pretty funny because we actually had the same second and third grade teacher. And
Oh,
if he were here right now, he would tell you that I absolutely hated him in the second and third grade. Like he tells everyone I'm the reason that he got his one referral for his entire life. And I'm like, that had nothing to
oh
do
my
with me.
gosh.
If you were being a good child, then you would, like don't blame me for that. He's
Yeah.
like, no, you hated me. So he ended up moving and we disconnected for a while. And then social media came about and that's how we found each other again.
Wow.
My first child I actually had with a boyfriend that I was with in high school. So right when I graduated, I started college 2 weeks later. So there was no like summer break.
Yeah.
And at the time, it was awesome. And then fast forward like 5 months, and I found out that I was pregnant. And
Oh
so
my
what I
goodness.
did, yeah, so I'm 18 pregnant, and I thought that my life was going to be completely different. And
Hmm.
this is just the journey that I had to go down. However, at the time, I did not want my husband to know that I was pregnant. So what I did was I blocked him. I blocked him on all social media, and he was
Yeah,
like, "Why did you do that? Like, I knew that you had a child." And I was like, "Well, I just didn't want anybody to think of me differently because at the time I was really hard on myself."
I get
Um,
that.
yeah, and so 3 years later, we went on our first official date, and from there, it was just like history. It felt like time just never like, that huge gap of time never existed. So we've known each other for, like, so long, but, like, officially and all of that stuff, that was more since 2018, 2019. Um, and it's an interesting story, and I think the funny thing about, growing with someone is like you think you know them, and then the next
Hmm.
day you learn like, oh, there's still so much more to know about you. Like, I
Right.
absolutely believe that I know my husband very well, but then he does something and I'm like, who are you? It's always a learning curve. So now you guys get me. How long were you dating before you guys or he proposed or
So he proposed. So, okay, our relationship, it does get a little rocky. It sounds great. But I think that's something about high school sweethearts that I don't think a
Mm,
lot of people might talk about is that you guys meet so young. So for some of us, I lost my virginity to him. I feel like for some of us, we're almost like, are we missing out on something maybe? Because
right,
we've been together
right.
for so young, for so long, since we were young. And so he proposed to me 3 years after.
Okay.
But we actually didn't get married until 2020.
Oh,
So
that's when I got married.
yeah, really? What
Shut
month?
down the October, so we're creeping up on our really?
No,
Okay, not
November. Mine is November.
oh,
But
November.
it was
Okay, okay.
early. Yeah,
We're creeping up
early
on our
November.
3-year anniversary. There we go.
Really? I know,
So,
us too, it's so crazy.
so you said it came with its challenges. What were one of the biggest challenges from growing up together?
Um, I would say a lot of it has to do with my family life. I ended up having to move in with him my senior year of high school. So it was
Mm,
very rushed. And I feel like it it kind of made it weird, I guess. In the beginning when I was young, I didn't really think about it. I was like, "Oh my God, this is so
mhm,
cool." But I did end up having to move in with him because of like some issues with my mom at the time, and I had nobody else at the time.
mhm,
Um, and I would say I graduated, and 2018, my dad came out of prison, and we ended up moving in with him. He was in a better spot, and
mm,
he lived in Miami. We actually lived in a really small town in North Florida, so it was a very big difference. Um, and then we started working, and our work schedules were different. We lived with
mm,
my dad, and because of that, I think just all these new changes, it kind of like made me feel a little bit iffy about what I
yeah,
really wanted. So we ended up taking a break. Um,
okay,
but nobody knew because he lived with me and we lived at my dad's. So I was like, okay, we're just gonna act like we're together. Everything was cool. And
yeah.
I ended up getting pregnant like a month later. Didn't realize it. I was planning my 21st birthday. I was excited. And then I found out I was pregnant. I was like, when is my period coming? It was weird. I
That's
took a
always the
pregnancy test.
craziest feeling.
Yeah, it was scary. I was so scared. Now, the only person who actually knew about the break was my mom,
Okay.
and my stepsister, and nobody else knew. So I didn't realize I was pregnant. I took a pregnancy test and it was negative. So I was like, okay, this obviously isn't it. So a
Mm,
few weeks later, it still didn't come and I take it and it was positive. And I think I took it at the worst time because I was like going into work. I was about to go to work and I took it and it was I just didn't expect it. And I was like,
yeah,
"Oh my God." And I'm like just basically hyperventilating in my dad's house, trying to be quiet, like, "Oh my God, this is not real right now."
I remember that
And
feeling.
yes,
Yeah,
and it was crazy because we were on a break and I was just like,
yeah.
"Oh my God." Um, but it honestly, it worked out. We communicated, we talked, and everything honestly got better. I think
Mm.
I'm obviously not saying a lot of things about it, but there was a lot of conversations that we had. He understood where I was coming from. He had also made mistakes previously, so it's like it worked. And
Yeah,
weirdly, ever since, we have been great. We ended up getting married. We planned my second child. And
yeah,
of course, there's always going to be hiccups, but I
absolutely.
think I feel like a lot of people don't really talk about that. The high school sweetheart stage, it's great, but it's also like we go through a lot of things. And I think because we're
Yeah.
so young, some of us feel like, oh my God, I might be missing out on something. And
Hmm.
then with me getting pushed into moving with him so early when I obviously wasn't ready for that, um, it got hard. But
Yeah, absolutely.
thankfully, like we're strong, we're better than ever, and we both learned from it.
Yeah. So my question is from having the child, right? And I'm sure when you found out you were pregnant, you were also still in the break phase of the
Yeah.
relationship. So when
hmm
you got pregnant, what was there like, how was that from that point? Because I know for myself when I was pregnant, I wasn't with my child's father. Oh, well, let me be honest. We were on and off.
Yeah.
And then there was something that happened that made me cut you off for good.
I
um,
get that.
and that was just how I operated in that situation, and I knew that it wouldn't be a long-term relationship. Um, but I knew the turmoil that I felt being pregnant and dealing with the tension of the relationship, and I felt like there was almost this pressure to make the relationship work because we are now bringing a child into the world. Like I was
hmm
like, I have to figure this out because it's only fair for my daughter to have both of us. And then
Right.
being so young, I'm a very emotional and I'm in tune with my feelings. I
Same.
was like, I'm not being
Same.
true to myself because like I know like I'm not getting what I want out of this relationship, and
Right.
that's okay. Um like this is what the reality is now. I'm pregnant and I'm going to be a mom, but that doesn't mean that I also have to be into a role that I'm not prepared for or that I
Right.
want. And I felt like it was a lot of pressure for us to be together, and not even from everyone else, but just like what we thought it should be. Did you guys
hmm
feel that at all? Like pressure
So
to make it work?
I get exactly what you're saying. It was honestly for me, it was a little bit of the opposite. I obviously while we were in a break, I don't think it was actually a month later. I think it must have been anywhere from like 2 to 3 months, but it just felt
Yeah.
so fast at the time.
Yeah.
So when we took a break, or I would say when we broke up,
Mm.
obviously there was a lot of things going on. I was meeting new people from my job. So when I found out I was pregnant, I was a little nervous, obviously, because I was like, oh my God, could it
Mm.
not be his? And I think
Right.
that's when I had like that real like this thing in my head where I was like, oh my God, like I made a mistake. It's like I wanted to be with him, but it's just the whole moving in and just a lot of family
Yeah.
stuff that I was dealing with that I was like, oh my God, there's all these new people. This is like a whole new world, because I grew up in this really
Mhm.
small one red light town. Like it was just so small. Yeah.
Really?
So yeah, it was a lot. So when I got pregnant, I was honestly fighting the battle of like, could it be his or could it not be his? Like I was
Mhm.
really nervous. And then being 20, 20 years old, I didn't turn 21 yet.
Yeah.
And he was the only person I had ever did anything with at that time up until I got pregnant. I was really down on myself. I was like, oh
Yeah.
my gosh, I'm like a whore. Like I,
Uh,
yeah, because I just ended up doing like having sex with somebody else. So
yeah.
I was fighting that a lot. I was really
Mhm.
hard on myself. I felt like I made like the biggest mistake ever because I was like, I have this great guy, or I had this great guy. And
Yeah, but I
then,
think what you're saying is valid though, because
right.
I know that when we're in high school, we have no
hmm
clue what reality is about to be, what the
Right.
real world is about to be. And I think there's a huge change. Like, kudos to the couples who were together in high school, like you and your husband, and made it out because
Yeah.
you change so much as soon as you step into the real world. And that's
hmm
not saying that all high school kids don't have like super extreme situations and circumstances where it makes
Right.
them mature faster, but they're still a child. So when you
Exactly.
step into being an adult and you realize your likes and dislikes, or um, there is that question of, am I missing out? Like, and a lot of
Right.
people, I had this conversation before, is do you think the whole phase is necessary? You know, like, do you think a female and a male should be able to experience a million people? Not, that's just me being exaggerated,
Yeah.
but like, should they have freedom to, or should they, before settling down, explore their likes and dislikes before settling? Or is that something that you figure out with one person and then you're okay? Like, because I feel like in the
Right.
back of our mind, there's always going to be that question of like, ooh, I wonder what this would be, because we're
Yeah.
curious human beings. Like, that's what drives
Mhm.
us, is curiosity.
Yeah.
Um, so that was a funny conversation that I had with a few, and it was with guys too. Like, they were like, "Yeah, the
Really?
whole page is necessary," and I'm like, "I don't think so." But I definitely could see where you question, or
Yeah.
you're unsure of if this is what you truly want.
Yeah, I think being 20 years old, going through that, and my husband, he lost his virginity before me. So he
Mhm.
had, I guess, that experience. I never did. So going from having to move in with him because of issues with my mom at the time, and then from
Yeah.
there moving to a way bigger city, having a different work schedule, and seeing new people, I was definitely like questioning myself. So,
Mm.
I went through that, and of course I got pregnant, but I was like, oh my God, like, I don't know who it could be.
Yeah.
Which made me feel like shit, honestly. I don't know if I can say that.
No, you're fine.
uh,
You're fine. Speak your truth, shorty. You
yeah,
good.
it made me feel like really crappy. Because I was like, wow, the only time I did this, and then this
And now,
happens,
yeah.
and I just felt so irresponsible at 20. So again, nobody really knew that
Mm.
except for my mom and my now husband. But at the
Yeah.
time, it was like really hard for me. And I ended up telling my father on my 21st birthday. I had to because he took me out and he obviously expected me to drink. And I'm like, oh no, I'm
Mm.
fine. I'm not wanting to. But then of course, a few months before that, we were like talking about it. So I ended up
Mm.
having to tell him. And that was like the different part because I had to tell him the whole story. He didn't know anything about any of it. So
Oh, it's like the situation with your
yeah,
mom and the, okay.
yeah, he didn't know anything. I would say like in my teenage years and before that, he wasn't really in my life, so he was kind of making it up to me, I guess you could say then.
Okay.
And he's great now, but he didn't want me to be in a predicament of me being like a single parent. So he was
Mm.
honestly at the time talking about like an abortion.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I was like, no, I don't want to do that. But he kept pushing it. And
Mm.
eventually I just was like, you know what? I guess I'm just gonna do that. I go and they do, I think they called it a transvaginal ultrasound. And they found out, I guess the time frame was earlier because I think at that time I thought that it was the other person. And
Yeah.
I was ready to be a single parent, but I think it was just a lot of pressure of my dad just not wanting that for me because he had to see
Yeah.
it with my mom, he had to see it with uh, his other children's moms.
Mhm.
He didn't want that for me. So I was just gonna go through with it, but they ended up saying that the weeks were like I was farther ahead. So that's when I
Oh,
was like, oh
wow.
my God, like this is like my husband. Um, I told him and he was like, no, like don't do it. Like don't do the abortion. We're just gonna talk about this and we talked. And the one thing I told him was like, I don't want you to be with me
Because
just
of it.
for our child. Like we don't have to
Absolutely.
do that.
Yeah. You know what's crazy is, and I have never really told a lot of people this part of my story of being 18 and pregnant, but I went through a lot of hard, like, that was a really rough time because, of course, your parents want better for you.
Right.
My father and I went through a really hard time because I'm his baby girl, and now his baby girl is stepping into a role that I shouldn't have had
Yep.
to. And at the time, what I wanted was for him to just hug me, but it was hard for him to because he didn't want this for me. He wanted more for me, and I
Yeah.
got that, but there was a lot of outside pressure for the abortion.
Mhm.
And that's something that I think nobody should push on anybody. I don't care if it's a
No.
parent or a friend
Yeah.
or the spouse. Abortion,
Mhm.
if you're not the one who has to go through it, should not be pushed on somebody
Right.
because I'm already in a very unstable situation emotionally,
Mhm.
mentally, and physically.
Yeah.
And I went to the doctor I went to go ask the lady if I could go through with an abortion because I was hearing it from one person, the father, my father, like it was just everywhere. And it was too much because I was like, okay, I have no
Yeah.
clue what I'm about to get into. Maybe this is just what I
Mhm.
need to do. And I remember going to sit on the table, and the lady who was, I had two nurses, which was very rare because usually you just have one in there. And she was sitting back in the corner looking very, very scared. Like she just looked like she did not want to be in there. And I was like, are you okay? Like, you don't have to be in here. It's okay. You can leave. And
Yeah.
she started crying. And I was like, what's happening? And she's like, no, this is just, honestly, I had an abortion and that's my biggest regret. And I remember my child's birthday. I remember my due date. Every time it comes around, I can't get it out of my head. And there's times where my body is like literally hurting because of my abortion.
Yeah.
And it's not even because of the pain of the abortion, but it's the emotional pain that
Exactly.
she went through. And I took that as a sign from God. And I went to my dad, I went to the child, that I went to everyone, and I was like, I'm not doing it. It's going to
Mhm.
be hard, but I made the decision myself to lay
Yeah.
down and have sex before marriage.
Yeah.
And now this is just something that I have to deal with. And granted, my child now is like the light of everybody's life. Like they just had no clue
Mhm.
what she was about to turn out to be.
Yeah.
Um, but the abortion topic is just something that is really sensitive with all the
Yeah.
rule. Like, if your beliefs, which I did not believe in abortion, but because everybody was pushing it on me, I thought that was the right way to go. And I was like, you know what?
Right.
I'm 18. Let somebody else make this decision for me too, because like I'm still living with my parents.
Mhm.
I don't have a good job. I'm working in a restaurant. Like, what am I going to do? And I'm so grateful that God sent me that sign because I was about to go through with it. Like I was like, I don't want this battle with my dad or anybody else. Um, and I just hope that people stop pushing
Yeah.
something on the one that one person has to live with for the rest of their life. Because that's
It,
something that I'm going to carry the burden of. It's not going to be the child's father. It's not going to be, and not saying that doesn't hurt them, but
mhm.
physically, it's my body, and that can
Right.
interrupt my future pregnancies. That can do so much more harm than people truly know about. So I'm glad that you touched on that subject because that's a
Yeah. It was hard. I was honestly a little even nervous like saying it right now because I would say a lot of people don't like know that. A lot of people don't
Mhm,
know the situation that of me and my husband having that break, of me getting pregnant and being really confused and like
mhm,
not sure at that moment like whose it was. Like I was just so ashamed of that because of
mm,
all of it. And um with the abortion topic, it was really pushed on.
mhm,
And I like now that I'm older, that's what, like 5 years ago or 6 years ago, I remember multiple times like, no, I don't want to do that. No, I don't want to do that.
mm.
Um, and it wasn't really just him saying it. It was like, I would say it's like, I think somebody else was saying it too. And I was like, okay, like eventually I just was like, you know what, this is probably just gonna be easier for everybody. And maybe like for me, because I don't know, but I remember while I was there, because he went with me, my
Mm,
father went with me, him and his fiance, and I went in there and I remember like crying. They
mm.
did our first ultrasound first, and I really wanted to see it. I think they were like, "Are you sure?" It was just really weird. When they did the transvaginal ultrasound and they said that I was farther along, they actually said that they couldn't even do the abortion that day. That they ended up
Wow.
needing me to reschedule for another day.
Nope.
And I took that as a sign because I was like,
Yeah.
oh my God, like, first of all, I'm farther along. You know, I knew that if it were my husband's, I would have kept it, like, without a doubt.
Mhm.
But because at the time I was unsure, I was like,
Mhm.
okay, I don't know. Because I did
Yeah.
tell the other person, and the other person was like,
No.
oh my God, it was just so annoying. No,
Yeah.
the other
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
person
Yeah. Yeah.
went through went through something similar a few months ago. And I
Yeah.
think that's when I was like, what did I do? Like, I just
Yeah.
felt
Yeah.
so pissed off, honestly. I
Yeah.
was like, this is
Absolutely.
stupid. So him saying that and then saying like, obviously he wanted me to also get an abortion. I was like,
Right.
you know
So
what,
let
at
me
this
ask
point,
you,
whatever.
once you had your first daughter, where were you guys at in the relationship then? Like when she's born, were
We
you
were
guys in a
great.
good place? You guys were
Yeah.
back like officially together.
Yeah.
Now, here's my
Um,
question because I felt
mhm.
this a lot of times after having child. Did you go through like postpartum depression or anything like that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So I would say that was six, almost, no, I'm six, sorry. That was almost 5 years ago.
Okay.
Um, and when we got back together, I really struggled with the thought of him only being with me because of my daughter. And
Mhm.
I was
I
just like,
feel that.
I don't, yeah, it was weird. I felt like we were in a great place. He never made me doubt him, but it was just my thoughts because of what I did. I was
Yeah.
just so mad at myself and putting us in that situation in the first place. Um, because I felt so bad for him. You know what I mean? Like
Mm.
we had a conversation and it was like nothing for him almost. Obviously I know
Yeah.
it bothered him, but he handled it like we talked, we communicated, we were very honest with each other
Mhm.
about anything that happened while we were on our break. And we were great, but I still I just still kept on like, are you
Yeah.
only with me because of this? And I would
That's a
say
real
I
thought
even
though.
said
That's a
that,
real
yeah,
thought.
it's
Yeah. Because
hard. It was
had we
like,
not got pregnant, would we be together?
hmm
And that's the question
exactly.
that a lot of
Yeah.
people, especially women, ask. Like,
hmm
if I didn't get pregnant, were we ever going to get back together or truly stay together?
Exactly.
And I think that's a dangerous game to play because
hmm
sometimes things do happen for people to be together or to figure
Yeah.
out if they're supposed to be together. But we, especially us women, get trapped in our what ifs. Like we got a whole
Yeah.
fairy tale world of what ifs.
hmm It's true. And that's exactly what it was. I mean, he just kept saying like, babe, if
Yeah,
if I don't want to be with you, I wouldn't be with you. And I was like,
yeah.
okay, I
I
get
don't believe you. And then
it.
tomorrow,
Yeah.
are you
Or
sure?
like, babe. Yeah. And yeah, pretty sure. But no, I did deal with postpartum depression. By then we ended up moving to Orlando. When I had her, we moved to Orlando when she was like 3 months old. I was like, I can't do this. Like Miami is not for me. There's too many
Yeah.
it's just too much for me. I think I I was so used to that small town world and going over there, I feel like the curiosity, the temptations, all of that. I felt like that
Mm,
was no longer for me. I think once I got pregnant, I was like, you know what? Like, as much as I wanted to live here, I think this is a sign that this is not going to be it. Like, I want to
yeah.
raise my daughter in a better place, but in Florida. I didn't want to go to North Florida. I didn't want to stay there. So I was like, Orlando, whatever,
Yeah.
Orlando.
Yeah.
um, but yeah, I would say from there, that's when postpartum hit hard. I had no family, I had no friends, and it was weird, but I will say I didn't realize I was going through it until I think I kept saying to my husband, I'm like, I feel alone,
Yeah.
but mentally alone. And I was like, I don't
Yeah.
understand what that means, but I'm saying it because that's how I feel. I'm like, I have you, I
Absolutely.
have my daughter, and I was a stay-at-home mom, but I was like, I just feel mentally like alone. I feel like nobody's there.
Mhm.
And people are checking up on me, but
It-
I
Yeah.
felt it.
Yeah.
And so
Postpartum
between,
depression is a beast.
yeah,
Because on top of just feeling the depression, our hormones make it like 100 times more impactful.
yeah,
And there were some days where, like, I literally would be in my bed and then I just feel tears falling out my eyes. And I'm like, "Why am I crying?" I
Mhm.
just feel like this, like, constant state of sadness, even though when I look at my baby, I feel happy, or
Mhm.
when there's these temporary moments of happiness, but most of it felt like sadness and, like, blue.
Yeah.
And telling somebody about that was really hard for me because I didn't want them to feel like they had to come save me. Like,
Mhm.
I was just like, "I should be okay," like, I'm a mom now, but especially our first time, no one teaches you about postpartum depression unless you have, like, a mother figure or a friend who's been in it and they're actually, like, walking this journey with you. A lot of times
Right.
when we're young like that, then nobody tells us.
Yeah.
Nobody tells us, and then we're, like, knee deep into depression, and it's just like,
Mhm.
"Oh, wow. Now how do I get out of this? Like, how do I make my way back out of this?" Because something that really hit hard too was when I started losing my hair, and I was just like, "What in the world?" Like, I remember
Yeah.
running to my mom, and I was like, "I think I have cancer," and she was like, "What?"
Oh.
And I was like, "My hair is
Yeah.
just falling out." Like, it was in, like, clumps of it. And she was like, "Sierra, people don't lose hair from cancer, they lose hair from chemotherapy. Like, how do you?" And I was like, "I'm not even thinking straight." Like, that's just how it was
Yeah.
for me. Like, I just wasn't even thinking straight. And that lasted for a while for me because I didn't know how to get out of it. I felt stuck into that depression.
It's hard. In like high school, I dealt a lot with just depression and
Mhm.
anxiety, and it then dealing with postpartum depression and my anxiety was just 10 times worse. Living in a
Mm.
whole new area, in an
Yeah.
apartment, no friends, no family. I was like, is somebody gonna break in like right now? Like that's all I
Mhm.
like. It was just like I put so many thoughts in my head. I never wanted to leave the house. I was only in Orlando for a year, and within that year, like
Mhm.
I never left the house by myself. I was just very like nervous.
Anxious and yeah.
Mhm.
And that's a real thing to that
Yeah.
anxiety. It gets really real.
Yeah.
Now can I ask when you moved to Orlando, you said you were here for a year, and when you were you guys still like just dating? Did he propose or what was the status of?
So we were still dating. But he never proposed again. It's weird. We somehow like we just like okay, so 2020 hits, right?
Yeah.
And we started talking about marriage again. So he actually never proposed. I guess we kind of like just
Said it
got
and
back
did
where we left off. Yeah, like we're like, oh hey, so we're fiancés again. Cool. Sorry about
All
what we
right.
did. No, but um 2020 hit and we were like talking about like, okay, when are we gonna get married? And I was like, you
Mm,
know what? Like, let's just do it this year. And that's exactly what happened. We're like, let's just do it this
yeah.
year. So we planned it. I think we started planning it in April or May, and we ended up getting married on November 7th.
Mm.
So it was fun. It was
Did you
a
guys
fun
did
thing to
you guys
do.
do like premarital counseling or anything?
No,
Okay.
we did no counseling. We did nothing. I feel like it probably would have helped, but we never did. I
Yeah.
think a lot of us is that one thing about us, whether it was like in the very beginning or even from when I broke up with him, like we always had great communication. Like
Okay.
we just always talked about how we felt. We never just like sugarcoated it. We talked about what we needed to do to work on ourselves. And I will say, even to this day, like we are really great with communicating. So it's like even when
Mhm.
we're in a hard spot, we both made sure to talk about it.
Yeah,
Even when we
absolutely.
were on our break, I explained to him why I wanted this break. And it's like he weirdly understood. And that's what I love about him is
Mhm.
like he forgave me. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Um, but he's just always been my best friend. When we were not together, it was like he was still my best friend. Until getting back
Mm,
together, he was still my best friend. And to this day, he is still my best friend, probably my only
yeah.
friend.
I was gonna ask you, I
And
was like,
yeah.
as a mom and as a wife, do you have friends or is it because for me, it's hard as hell to make friends, if I'm being honest.
It
Like,
is so hard.
it's hard to make friends and then keep those friends because there's
Mhm.
so much of us that's being pulled to,
Yeah.
like, to our husband and to our children. And when I try to have friends, especially if they're single or especially if they don't have kids, we don't there's some friends who can understand that and respect it and be there the way that you guys both are able and capable of being there for each other. But there's some friendships that unfortunately can't survive because
Right.
that just makes no sense that you can't be here right now when I need you.
Mhm.
And that's what I'm struggling with right now. Like, that's been a prayer for mine, is like, God, just show me or provide me a friend where we are beneficial to each other. Because it's like, how do I make a friend and then maintain a friend that is valuable and I add value to their life? Because I don't like meaningless friendships. I don't like that.
I get
Like,
that.
I don't need another person to just sit here and talk and gossip to because I talk to my kids
Right.
24/7.
Exactly. No,
Yeah.
I do have it's hard. I will say that. I have my
Yeah.
childhood friends. I have one specific, or I have two specifically that have stuck with me since high school. One of them
Mhm.
had her child 6 months before I had Anais, my first daughter.
Mhm.
And I think that's what's really helped. We really bond with that. Our children are very
Absolutely.
close with each other when they see each other. We both talk about it. I mean, we obviously had different relationships,
Yeah.
but it works. And that's something that we can always talk about. And we talk about our motherhood,
Yeah.
relationships, children, like at least that works. I have my other friend who doesn't have a child, but she's just always been there for me as much as she
Yeah.
could. Um, but they don't live close. They also live in North Florida. And
Okay.
then as far as like in this area, I probably realistically have like about one to three. One
Mhm.
of them is a mom. We talk, but we just don't talk as much. Um, and then the other ones, I mean, it's kind of the same. It's like it's hard to
Yeah.
find friends. I
It's
have tried
hard.
so hard. I've tried so hard. I feel like a lot of people either don't want to be friends with their mom because apparently we just can't do the stuff they do. I don't know.
Yeah.
And then,
And it's like, I'm still fun. Like,
right,
even right,
like
I'm
we're
like,
still
when
cool.
I'm not when I'm please don't get it twisted. When I'm not with my
Yeah.
even with my kids, I think I'm really fun, like, or having friends that have kids, when you get together, like, we have a great time, but
Mhm.
they don't get the responsibility of them like, it can be almost nagging just how it is to
Yeah.
us, but, like, times 10 to somebody that just doesn't have to be in that world. But I'm like,
Right.
guys, when I'm not in this, like, I'm still Sierra, like, I'm still cool, we
Right.
still throwing it back, like, it's not like
Mhm.
it has to be all about my children, like, I don't wanna
Yeah.
there's some friends where I don't need to meet up and talk about my kids, and, like, I just
Exactly.
wanna have a free time, but I'm waiting for the day that I can, like, have that one friend, and I do have friends, don't get me wrong, but it's like,
Yeah.
to make a friend and be able to maintain it and be that type
Exactly.
of friendship that I think I need at the moment. Like, I don't think
Mhm.
in this moment I have the type of friend that I need
I
because
get
of
that.
where I'm at mentally. Like, it's not doing it for me, if that makes sense.
I get
So,
that. No, I get that. I feel like that's what I struggle with. It's like I almost feel weird for saying like at 26 years old, I'm still trying to find my best friend. Like I
y-
am trying to find
yes.
that person. I'm like, I want to send you TikToks. I want to do this. Let's do that.
Yeah,
Let's do stuff with our, children and let's not. Like, let's do
exactly.
something. Like, let's
Have
have
you
fun.
I'm on TikTok and there's her name is like Jayla Brene and then her best friend is Diana and they met over social media. And I was like, you guys give me hope because they're like 28, 30, and
Right.
they never had like they talk openly about them finding each other through social media and now they are just like this. Like, their beliefs are in line, their values are in line. And that's something that I need. I don't need someone who's like, you know, it feels like we're always, like, butting heads. I just want it to feel like
Right.
when we get together, it's peace.
Right.
Like
Like peace. It's
that
like
type of
natural,
yeah.
authentic. Me and my husband, we joke about it all the time. We're like, dude, like we just want to find people where we can have like we could all hang out. Like he needs a friend too. Believe me, he is
Yes.
very like introverted. He only wants to like he talks to me. He doesn't really have friends either. But he's not like open either. And I'm like, I need to find a friend for you, but I also need to find a friend for me. Like we need to
Do you
figure
guys
this
have
out.
married friends?
No,
Yeah, see, like we
it's
have
so hard.
one couple of married friends, and even with them, it's still like we get
Oh, you
pulled
know what?
so many ways.
We do. I forgot. Sorry. That's my my husband's friend from work. They got close, and I think this year we started getting closer with them.
Hmm.
And they're really cool. Um, but yeah, it's like I'm still trying to find that. Just I feel like I'm missing it. Like I'm like I know I'm
Yeah,
gonna get it one day,
that's
but I'm missing
exactly how I
it.
feel. That's exactly
Yeah.
how I feel. Like it's so nice to have the friends that I have, but there's something that in that I need in a friendship that I
Right.
know it's not being met right now. Like it's not fully
Mm-hmm.
satisfied, but we will get that. And like I love that you said that you and your husband have great communication because that's really important, especially when you grow together, because that's why a lot of
Yeah.
people outgrow each other
Mm-hmm.
because their communication is not in line. So if you can openly tell your spouse who should be your friend or your best friend, like, hey,
Mm-hmm.
this is what I'm feeling. Even if it's not pretty, like, even if it's like, yo, I'm wondering if I'm missing something, I should be able
Yeah.
to tell you that and we work through it because those
Mm-hmm.
are honest thoughts. And when we have to hide those pieces of ourselves, we're not true to who we are, and then we start acting different, or we only show our spouse the piece that they want to see, or etc. So I love that you said communication for you and your spouse is very open, and it's always been that way. That's probably how you guys were able to be married because once again, those high school sweethearts moving into marriage, it's like real.
It's hard. It's hard.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I would say what's great about us is that it's not just that we communicate. I think what works is that we're both willing to work on ourselves because I feel like it's one
Mm,
thing to want to just like you guys can communicate well, but it's like another thing to actually work on what needs to be worked on.
I
Because like
love that.
even for me, I when he communicates with me, like I can sometimes when I'm mad or I'm like frustrated, I I let it out without actually
Mhm.
meaning stuff sometimes. And it's like I just say it, or I used to. I don't do that as much anymore. Thank God, because he talks to me about it. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna work on it.
Right,
But
right.
before it was like a thing, and even with him, I've had a few issues too, where I'm like, hey, like we need to
Mhm.
do this, we need to do that. Specifically work life, it's like I'm like, I want to spend time with you. I want to do more with you, and you're doing this and that, whatever. And luckily, like he was able to work on it. It's just I feel like
Absolutely.
that's what works for sure.
Yeah.
And the good thing about both of us that we both need that reassurance. So I reassure him, he reassures me, and we're great.
I love that's me 100 like,
Yeah.
and it's so funny because like for me and my husband, we have different like love languages.
Hmm.
So I'll be like, okay, I need to hear you say it. Like, do you love me
Hmm.
today?
Yeah.
And not
Yeah.
because I'm questioning it, but it always, I think we, especially young and married with kids, it's very easy to fall into routine and it can
Hmm.
become or feel mundane. And you have to intentionally date each other and intentionally communicate with each other,
Right.
intentionally get each other and work, like you said. Because if you don't, you'll look up and be like, dang, I haven't hugged him in like 5 days because we
Hmm.
get so pulled by everything else that needs us. Where when you're married, that's top of priority, especially, or let me
Yeah,
say that for me. Like if I
for
said I'm
sure.
getting married, that's my priority. And I think that's really important to value because when other things start to get on top of your marriage, it becomes last. So,
That's
and I'm
true.
just trying to keep that, you know,
No, for sure.
going.
I feel like that is one thing that we need. Like I feel it's between that and then also for us. when I was dealing with the postpartum depression, I never really went out. So
Mhm.
when we moved to where we're at now, and then we planned my second daughter, one
Okay.
thing we tried to make sure is that we're having like date nights or we're just doing
Mm.
us because one thing that like we didn't do when we had my first one was that we never actually had time for just us. But we also
Yeah.
didn't have the opportunity because we had nobody to watch Anais, whereas now we do. So it's like now we're able to do the date nights and we're able to just
Yeah.
do us because I feel like as parents, you just get lost in parenthood or in motherhood or
Mhm.
kids go first. But realistically, like we also have to put ourselves first. So
Yeah,
in order
absolutely.
for us to be the best parents we could be, honestly. So
Yeah, I agree. Well, Miss Jazlyn, thank you for sharing your story. And I
yeah.
say that because we don't hear these conversations enough for
hmm
us young moms and young married couples. Like, it's important that we uh, be honest with people because I truly think when we're not honest with people, we're not being honest with ourselves and we're not
Right.
who we truly are. So
hmm
thank you for being vulnerable and letting the world
For
see your
sure.
light. And I would love for you to tell us all about, like, put your business on the map. Tell us about you, where we can find you so we can follow
Yeah.
you and support you.
So first, I'm gonna say I am not like a counselor or a therapist or anything
She
like
said,
that.
I'm just Jazlyn.
I am just Jazlyn. I am a mom, and but I'm also a travel advisor. I own Luxe Dreams Travel, and you can find that on Instagram. And then I am the founder of Latinx Business Babes, which is based in Central Florida. We do monthly meetups, really anywhere. Is
Hmm.
and yeah, you can find that on Instagram as well, which is Latinx Business Babes. And then for myself, I
Awesome.
just have a personal Instagram page. I mean, if you guys
She
want to
said, I'm
follow
just a
it,
mom. Right,
yeah.
right, right.
I mean, I think it's like I don't even know what it's called. Let me
Hey, well, our
check.
mamas are superhero. We are superheroes. We
Yeah.
wear so many capes. So you are more than just Jazlyn. You have so
Thank
many
you.
titles, and you are carrying them beautifully.
Thank
And
you.
I just wanted to say thank you for joining. I am so honored to have had you here. And I'm sure the world would love to hear all because high school sweethearts are rare. It's,
Yeah, they are.
we don't get too much of those success marriage stories. So thank you.
Yeah.
And
Thank
if you're
you.
still watching, guys, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, follow, support her business. And I'll see you guys next week. Bye.
Bye, guys.